Ladies and gentlemen, this is absolutely huge news. In a couple of seconds, you will hear from President Trump. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Be here for the live stream later this evening. Military.com. Trump agrees to pause tariffs on Mexico, Canada after they pledge to boost border enforcement. 20,000 soldiers, troops, and frontline personnel will be guarding both respective borders after this evening. National Post. Canada agrees. Canada has agreed to deploy its prior $1.3 billion spending plan and nearly 10,000 frontline personnel. Breaking U.S. tariffs on hold 30 days after Canada commits to beefing up security. Same thing with Mexico. Mexico agrees to deploy 10,000 U.S. troops in exchange for tariff pause. Basic math, ladies and gentlemen, 20,000 frontline personnel and troops to protect their respective borders with the United States of America. This is absolutely phenomenal, and it's something that Democrats should have done the past 4 years, and it's something had President Trump, and you'll hear him in a second, had he been able to implement exactly what he wanted to do his first term, we wouldn't have had all the terrible consequences of the Democratic Party's domestic and immigration policies, primarily a whole lot of people losing their lives from substances that come from such a porous and a place in the north and south, in the northern and southern geographic regions of our country, that, especially southern geographic region, where there's essentially no demarcation. We can go on forever. But hit subscribe to this channel. Be here for the live stream later. This is President Trump. Unbelievable. And then they said, oh, well, you know what? This isn't going to work. It's going to cause inflation. This is going to save not only taxpayer dollars, but lives. A great many lives. For a number of reasons. This is President Trump.
At the Department of Justice and the FBI, there are a number of high-level people who are being asked to resign or are being told they are going to be fired. Did you specifically request any actions at the Bureau or DOJ with respect to those employees?
No, but we have some very bad people over there. It was weaponized at a level that nobody's ever seen before. They came after a lot of people, like me, but they came after a lot of people. No, I wasn't involved in it. I'll have to see what is exactly going on after this is finished. But if they fired some people over there, that's a good thing, because they were very bad. They were very corrupt people, very corrupt, and they hurt our country very badly with the weaponization. They used the Justice Department to go after their political opponent, which in itself is illegal. And obviously it didn't work.
Are you going to impose tariff on the European Union?
What does that mean?
Are you going to impose tariff too on the European Union like you are going to do for Mexico and Canada?
Well, you're asking me a question because I'm sure you didn't hear. Am I going to impose tariffs on the European Union? Do you want the truthful answer, or should I give you a political answer? Absolutely. Absolutely. The European Union has treated us so terribly.
You promised Americans to try to reduce costs, and so many of the products that would be tariffed when they come into the country, the outgoing country is not paying the tariff. The buyers in the United States pay that, and then that's passed on to consumers in most instances.
Sometimes.
How would you expect to have prices come down if you have such a broad plan for tariffs? And what do you say to the voters who want to see you reduce everyday costs?
Well, let me just tell you that I got elected for a lot of reasons. Number one was the border. Number two was inflation, because I had almost no inflation. And yet I charged hundreds of billions of dollars of tariffs to countries. And think of it, I had almost no inflation, and I took in $600 billion of money from other countries. And tariffs don't cause inflation, they cause success. They cause big success. So we're going to have great success. There could be some temporary short-term disruption, and people will understand that. I had that when I negotiated some of the good deals for the farmers. And unfortunately, those deals have been led astray by Biden and his people because they didn't enforce the deals. We have a deal with China, which is phenomenal for the farmers, but there was nobody to enforce it in the Biden administration. They let them get away with murder. So that's another thing we're going to be bringing.
Do you accept the principle of costs being passed
committed to
on?
buying $50 billion worth of farm product, and they did it when I was president. And as soon as I left, they stopped doing it because there was nobody in Biden to enforce it.
So this is a typical talking point from journalists who were just fine with 9% inflation at one point in Biden's administration. The only reason inflation went down is because interest rates were increased exponentially. Mortgage rates doubled under Biden. Okay, tariffs, if they are prolonged for 10 plus years or for 3 or 4 or 5 years, depending on the nature of the tariffs, yes, of course, would cause inflation. What these wonderful, morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats, who are almost always the quote-unquote journalists talking about Trump's tariffs leading to inflation, don't understand. What they don't understand is that these are negotiating tools. Trump is negotiating. So instead of spending hundreds of millions or billions of dollars defending our border, which we have to spend anyway, but hundreds of billions or hundreds of millions more or billions more, we get other countries to do their job to ensure that substances, illegal narcotics, a whole bunch of things don't go into our country from their country. So instead of us paying, they pay, which is what they protect their own borders as well. It's a win-win for everyone. And we had less than 2% inflation with Trump, and interest rates were less than 2%, less than 1% at one point. So we had extremely low inflation and extremely low interest rates. This is a fact. And mortgage rates were less than half of what they are now, even with interest rates going down. So all of this stuff about tariffs leading to high cost, it's like the Democratic Party and the wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats who are almost always journalists at major publications, the Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, The Atlantic, all the regional publications that side with the Democratic Party, they weren't worried about inflation. In fact, they were saying, oh, what's the big deal about inflation? You don't want Trump, the menace, to become president. They were actually trying to downplay inflation for years. Inflation was caused by a number of things. In large part, the trillions in stimulus that needed to be given to the American people after Democratic governors and one person, Falsey, who was preemptively pardoned, and others, mainly a whole bunch of government officials, media, a whole bunch of bureaucrats throughout the country 5 years ago saying we need to shut down economic activity. That was the foundation of all the economic turmoil in terms of inflation. When you shut down the United States economy, the number one economy in the world, and you say, well, other people are doing it, we have to do it too. When in reality, you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to shut down the entire American U.S. economy. You didn't have to do that. And so you then pumped trillions into the economy in fiscal and monetary stimulus. And there was supply chain breakdown, and there were shortages of both labor and goods and services and materials. And so, yes, once the morally superior liberal Democrats said, oh, we can open up the economy now, interestingly enough, when Biden became president, then, there was a huge spike in inflation, and everyone in the Democratic Party, including the Treasury Department and the Fed, said it was temporary. Go back in time in 2021, they said inflation was temporary. They used a different word. They said inflation was temporary. They were wrong. Then they spiked interest rates exponentially to curb inflation going through the roof. But Trump is 100% right. He just won. It took him about a month to win a trade battle with two major, huge economies. Hit subscribe. Be here for the live stream later. Thank you.